Top 10 Black scientists that were silenced. History taught us to memorize famous names, but it rarely told us who truly built the world we live in. Behind modern medicine, GPS, electricity, psychology, and cancer treatment stand Black scientists whose breakthroughs were quietly taken, renamed, or erased. Some saved millions of lives. Others reshaped entire systems. Yet their names were pushed into footnotes or removed completely. This is not a coincidence, it is a pattern. Today on Black Excellence Legends, we reclaim those stories and restore the truth that was denied for generations. Stay until the end, because some of these discoveries will change how you see history forever. And as you watch, ask yourself, how many geniuses were silenced simply because of who they were? Share your thoughts in the comments. Alice Augusta Ball. Alice Augusta Ball was a scientific prodigy whose brilliance reshaped modern medicine. Yet for nearly a century, her name was deliberately pushed into obscurity. Born in 1892, Alice Ball emerged at a time when both race and gender dictated who was allowed to be recognized as a scientific authority. Despite these barriers, she achieved what few could before her mid-20s. She developed the first effective treatment for leprosy, Hansen's disease, a condition that had long condemned patients to isolation, exile, and slow death. By the age of 23, Alice Ball became the first African American and the first woman to earn a master's degree from the University of Hawaii. Her research focused on chalmugra oil, a substance long rumored to help leprosy patients, but considered medically impractical. The oil was thick, painful to administer, and nearly impossible for the human body to absorb. Physicians knew the potential, but no one had found a way to make it usable. Alice Ball solved that problem through chemistry, not guesswork. She isolated and chemically modified the fatty acids of chalmugra oil, converting them into water-soluble ethyl esters that could be safely injected. The result was revolutionary. For the first time in history, leprosy became treatable, not just managed. Hospitals began reporting patient improvement, reduced symptoms, and reintegration into society. Her method became the standard global treatment for leprosy for more than 20 years, until sulfone antibiotics were introduced in the 1940s. Then, in 1916, Alice Ball died suddenly at just 24 years old. The exact cause remains unclear. Records reference illness and possible laboratory exposure, but documentation is incomplete. What is not unclear is what followed. After her death, Arthur L. Dean, the president of the University of Hawaii, published her work under his own name. Medical journals credited the breakthrough as the Dean method. For decades, textbooks, institutions, and researchers repeated the lie. The erasure lasted 84 years. It was not until 2000 that the University of Hawaii formally acknowledged Alice Ball's authorship. In 2007, the state of Hawaii declared February 29th as Alice Ball Day, a symbolic choice reflecting how rarely the truth had been allowed to surface. Today, historians and medical scholars confirm that Alice Ball alone developed the chemical process that saved thousands of lives worldwide. Alice Ball did not fail to be recognized because her work lacked merit. She was erased because acknowledging her genius would have forced institutions to confront uncomfortable truths about race, power, and ownership in science. Her story exposes how innovation can be stolen quietly, not through destruction, but through attribution. Alice Augusta Ball was not just a victim of historical silence. She was a medical pioneer, a chemist whose intellect outpaced her era. Every modern conversation about equity in science traces back to figures like her, individuals whose discoveries shaped humanity while their names were stripped away. Remembering Alice Ball is not an act of nostalgia, it is an act of correction. Vivien Theodore Thomas. Vivien Theodore Thomas was one of the most influential figures in the history of modern medicine, despite never holding a medical degree. His story exposes a truth that institutions tried to bury for decades. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in science were built on black genius that was deliberately kept invisible. Born in 1910 in Louisiana and raised in Nashville, Vivien Thomas dreamed of becoming a physician. He saved diligently for college, only to have those plans destroyed overnight by the Great Depression. With no financial path to medical school, Thomas took a job in 1930 at Vanderbilt University as a laboratory assistant to surgeon Dr. Alfred Blalock, earning just $12 a week, a wage closer to janitorial work than scientific research. What followed defied every assumption about who was qualified to do science. Without formal training, Thomas taught himself surgical techniques by observation and repetition. He designed experimental procedures, built his own instruments, and mastered anatomy through hands-on work. Within a short time, Blalock realized the truth. Thomas was not an assistant, he was indispensable. Their most significant work focused on blue baby syndrome, a congenital heart defect that deprived infants of oxygen and almost always resulted in death. Surgeons had failed for decades to find a solution. It was Vivien Thomas who developed the operative method, refining it through hundreds of experimental surgeries. When the procedure was ready for human use, Thomas trained Blalock step by step. On November 29, 1944, the first successful operation was performed at Johns Hopkins Hospital on a critically ill infant. Blalock stood at the operating table, but Thomas stood directly behind him, guiding every incision. The surgery worked. Pediatric cardiac surgery was born. Blalock became internationally famous. Vivien Thomas remained officially classified as a technician. For more than 30 years, Thomas trained generations of surgeons, many of whom went on to lead departments around the world, while being barred from using the main entrance, excluded from faculty dining rooms, and denied professional titles. He authored research without credit and taught doctors who outranked him on paper, but relied on his expertise in practice. In 1971, Johns Hopkins unveiled portraits of its surgical pioneers. Physicians from across the globe gathered, and many openly wept when they saw Vivien Thomas's portrait finally displayed among those he had trained. In 1976, at age 66, he was awarded an honorary doctorate, a recognition that came painfully late. Vivien Theodore Thomas died in 1985 at the age of 75. Today, every child saved through corrective heart surgery owes part of their survival to his work. Thomas proved that genius does not require permission, credentials, or approval. It requires opportunity. His legacy is not just medical, it is moral. He stands as evidence that brilliance can survive systemic exclusion, even when institutions do everything possible to deny it. Remembering Vivien Thomas is not about rewriting history. It is about finally telling it correctly. Maynard Daly. Maynard Daly was a scientist whose work quietly reshaped modern medicine, even as her name remained largely absent from textbooks for decades. Born in 1921 in New York City, Daly grew up with an early understanding that intelligence alone was not enough for black scientists to be recognized. Her father, who had been forced to abandon his own chemistry studies due to financial hardship, became her earliest inspiration, and a constant reminder of how easily brilliance could be interrupted. Daly refused that fate. She earned her bachelor's degree from Queens College in 1942, followed by a master's degree from New York University just 1 year later. In 1947, she achieved a historic milestone, becoming the first African-American woman to earn a PhD in chemistry in the United States. At a time when few women, let alone black women, were allowed access to advanced scientific training, Daly entered research spaces that were neither welcoming nor inclusive. Her scientific focus centered on biochemistry, particularly the molecular mechanisms that govern human health. Daly conducted pioneering research on cholesterol, blood pressure, and arterial function, establishing the direct link between high cholesterol levels and heart disease. Today, this relationship is considered foundational knowledge in cardiovascular medicine. When doctors advise patients to manage cholesterol to reduce heart attack risk, they are relying on principles Daly helped prove through rigorous experimentation. Daly's work extended beyond cholesterol alone. She also studied protein synthesis, the structure of cell nuclei, and the biochemical processes that regulate cellular health. Over her career, she published more than 80 scientific papers, contributing to a deeper understanding of how diet and chemistry influence long-term disease outcomes. These findings helped shape public health guidelines that have saved countless lives. Despite these achievements, Daly did not receive the level of recognition granted to many of her white male contemporaries. She was not denied publication or stripped of credentials, but she was excluded from public celebration, a subtler form of erasure. Her discoveries became standard medical knowledge without her name becoming standard historical knowledge. This omission mattered because it reinforced the false narrative that major scientific breakthroughs rarely come from Black women. In response, Daly chose action over resentment. She became a dedicated educator at Columbia University, mentoring generations of students and actively working to expand access to science education. Later in her career, she established a scholarship fund at Queens College to support minority students pursuing degrees in chemistry and the natural sciences. Her legacy, therefore, extended beyond research. It became structural. Marie Maynard Daly died in 2003 at the age of 82. By then, millions had benefited from medical standards rooted in her discoveries, often without knowing her name. Remembering Daly is not about rewriting science. It is about correcting the story of who built it. Her life proves that some of the most influential minds do their work without applause, and that silence, when left unchallenged, can be just as powerful as denial. Charles Richard Drew. Charles Richard Drew was a physician and scientist whose work quite literally kept people alive, often without them ever knowing his name. Born in 1904 in Washington, D.C., Drew combined athletic discipline with academic brilliance, excelling in both before committing fully to medicine. He earned his medical degree and doctorate at a time when Black physicians were routinely denied resources. Yet he persisted, driven by a belief that science should serve humanity rather than ideology. Drew's most transformative contribution addressed a deadly problem of the early 20th century: the inability to store and transport blood safely. Before World War II, countless soldiers and civilians died from blood loss simply because transfusions could not reach them in time. Drew recognized what others had missed: that blood plasma, when separated from red blood cells, could be preserved longer and transported efficiently. Through meticulous experimentation, he developed protocols for collecting, processing, refrigerating, and distributing plasma at scale. In 1940, Drew was appointed director of the Blood for Britain program, which supplied thousands of units of plasma to treat casualties during the London Blitz. The initiative proved decisive and laid the groundwork for modern transfusion medicine. Soon after, Drew became the first director of the American Red Cross Blood Bank, establishing standards that remain foundational today. Modern blood banking, its logistics, safety measures, and clinical reliability rests on Drew's innovations. Yet recognition did not protect him from discrimination. The American Red Cross implemented a policy mandating racial segregation of blood donations, falsely claiming differences based on race. As a scientist, Drew knew the policy was biologically indefensible. Blood compatibility depends on antigens, not skin color. He condemned the rule as unscientific and unethical, and ultimately resigned in protest. His stance cost him institutional favor, but preserved scientific integrity. In 1950, Drew died following a car accident in North Carolina. Conflicting accounts persist about the care he received, But what remains indisputable is the cruel irony. The man who revolutionized transfusion medicine died within a segregated medical system. Over time, myths clouded the facts. Some falsely claimed he was denied treatment because of his race. Verified records indicate his injuries were severe. What must be emphasized is not rumor, but the broader truth of a system that marginalized him, even as it benefited from his work. Charles Richard Drew died at 45, but his legacy endures wherever blood is stored, transported, and transfused to save lives. Every emergency room protocol, every blood drive, every life preserved by plasma therapy traces back to standards he helped create. Remembering Drew is not an act of revisionism. It is an act of accuracy. He proved that science can dismantle lies, and that courage sometimes means walking away from institutions that refuse to honor truth. To speak his name is to acknowledge that modern medicine was shaped by a mind that chose evidence over prejudice and humanity over convenience. Gladys May West. Gladys May West is a mathematician whose work quietly reshaped the modern world. So quietly that for decades, billions of people relied on her calculations without ever knowing her name. Born in 1930 in rural Virginia, West grew up in a farming community where opportunity was scarce and expectations were narrow. Education was her escape route. Excelling academically, she earned a scholarship to Virginia State College, graduating with a degree in mathematics in 1952, followed by a master's degree in 1955. In 1956, West began working at the U.S. Naval Proving Ground in Dahlgren, Virginia, becoming only the second Black woman ever hired at the facility. The environment was highly technical, male-dominated, and racially restrictive, yet West's talent was undeniable. She entered the early age of computing, working with room-sized machines that relied on punch cards and raw mathematical logic. Programming then was not about convenience, it was about precision. West's core challenge was deceptively complex, accurately modeling the shape of the Earth. Contrary to common assumptions, the Earth is not a perfect sphere. It is an irregular, slightly flattened shape with subtle variations caused by gravity and rotation. For satellite navigation to work, those irregularities must be calculated with extreme accuracy. West specialized in processing satellite data and developing mathematical models of the geoid, the true shape of the Earth. Her work laid the mathematical foundation for the Global Positioning System, GPS. Without these calculations, satellites would not be able to determine precise locations on Earth. Modern GPS accuracy, often within meters or less, depends directly on models West helped create. Every time a phone maps a route, an aircraft navigates airspace, emergency services locate a call, or ships cross oceans, they rely on principles derived from her research. Yet for decades, West's contributions remained buried. Much of her work was classified under military programs, and her name appeared only in technical documents inaccessible to the public. While GPS became one of the most transformative technologies in human history, the mathematician behind its accuracy remained virtually unknown outside specialized circles. Recognition came late. In 2018, when West was 87 years old, she was inducted into the Air Force Space and Missile Pioneers Hall of Fame. By then, she had already retired after a long career, having also earned a PhD later in life. The delay was not due to lack of achievement, but to the structures that failed to elevate Black women working behind the scenes of national defense and scientific infrastructure. Gladys May West is still alive today, witnessing a world that finally acknowledges her role in shaping daily life. Her story challenges the idea that innovation always arrives with fame. Sometimes it arrives quietly, mathematically, embedded so deeply into civilization that it becomes invisible. Remembering West is not about retroactive praise. It is about accuracy. She proved that brilliance can exist far from the spotlight, and that silence does not diminish impact, even when history tries to. Percy Leavon Julian. Percy Leavon Julian was one of the most important chemists of the 20th century, yet his name was systematically pushed to the margins of scientific history. Born in 1899 in Montgomery, Alabama, Julian was the grandson of enslaved people and grew up in a society designed to limit Black ambition. In his home state, Black children were not permitted to attend public high school, forcing Julian to educate himself far beyond what the system allowed. From the beginning, his brilliance existed in direct conflict with institutional racism. Julian's academic achievements were extraordinary. He graduated valedictorian from DePaul University, then earned a PhD in chemistry from the University of Vienna in 1931, at a time when such credentials were almost unheard of for African Americans. Despite his qualifications, U.S. universities repeatedly denied him permanent faculty positions, not due to lack of merit, but because of race. Locked out of academia, Julian turned to industrial chemistry, where his impact would become global. Julian specialized in synthetic chemistry, focusing on extracting and recreating complex compounds from plants. His work revolutionized medicine by making life-saving drugs affordable and widely available. In the 1930s, he successfully synthesized physostigmine, a treatment for glaucoma, becoming the first person to do so artificially. Later, during the 1940s, Julian developed a method to mass-produce synthetic cortisone, transforming treatment for arthritis, inflammation, and autoimmune disorders. Before his work, cortisone was prohibitively expensive and scarce. After Julian, it became accessible to millions. His innovations did not stop there. Julian's research also laid the chemical groundwork for hormone therapies and the birth control pill, advancing reproductive medicine worldwide. Over his career, he secured more than 130 patents, each representing a breakthrough that improved or saved human lives. By any scientific measure, impact, originality, productivity, Percy Julian ranked among the elite chemists of his era. Yet professional success did not shield him from hatred. In 1950, after purchasing a home in Oak Park, Illinois, Julian's house was firebombed twice by white supremacists enraged by his presence in their neighborhood. His wife and children were inside during one of the attacks. The perpetrators faced minimal consequences, a chilling reminder that even world-changing scientists were not protected from racial violence. Percy Leavon Julian died in 1975, having reshaped modern medicine while enduring constant resistance. Formal recognition came painfully late. He was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 1990, 15 years after his death. By then, his discoveries had already become standard components of medical treatment worldwide. Julian's story exposes a brutal truth. Science did not fail to recognize him because his work lacked value. It failed because acknowledging his genius would have challenged deeply rooted systems of exclusion. Remembering Percy Julian is not about elevating a forgotten figure. It is about correcting a historical distortion. He did not just do chemistry. He survived doing it, while the world tried to burn him out of it. Mamie Phipps Clark. Mamie Phipps Clark was a psychologist whose research helped dismantle legalized racial segregation in the United States. Yet her name was long overshadowed, even within the work she helped create. Born in 1917 in Arkansas, Clark grew up in a society where segregation was enforced by law and normalized by custom. From an early age, she observed how racism shaped identity, self-worth, and opportunity, questions that would later define her life's work. Clark earned her undergraduate degree from Howard University and continued there to complete her master's and doctoral studies, becoming one of the first Black women to earn a PhD in psychology. At a time when psychology often ignored the lived experiences of Black children, Clark chose to center them. Her research asked a question many institutions refuse to confront. What does segregation do to a child's sense of self? Together with her husband and research partner, Kenneth Clark, Mamie designed what would become known as the doll test. In controlled studies, Black children were presented with identical dolls, differing only in skin color, and asked questions about preference, beauty, and goodness. The results were devastatingly consistent. Many children associated positive traits with white dolls and negative traits with Black dolls, revealing internalized racism formed at an early age. Crucially, this was not anecdotal observation. It was empirical, psychological evidence. Mamie Clark's work demonstrated that segregation inflicted measurable psychological harm, producing feelings of inferiority and damaged self-esteem in Black children. These findings directly challenged the legal doctrine of separate but equal, exposing it as scientifically false. In 1954, Clark's research was cited in the landmark Supreme Court decision, Brown v. Board of Education, which ruled racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional. It marked one of the rare moments when social science directly influenced constitutional law. Yet public credit largely went to Kenneth Clark, while Mamie's intellectual leadership was often minimized or omitted altogether. Beyond research, Clark was also an institution builder. She co-founded the Northside Center for Child Development in New York City, providing mental health services to Black and marginalized children who were routinely denied access to psychological care. The center remains active today, a living extension of her belief that research must translate into real-world impact. Mamie Phipps Clark died in 1983 at the age of 66. By then, her work had reshaped both psychology and civil rights law, even if her name was not always spoken alongside those outcomes. Her marginalization reflects a broader pattern in which Black women's intellectual labor was absorbed into history without acknowledgement. Remembering Mamie Phipps Clark is not about adding a footnote to the civil rights movement. It is about recognizing that legal change often begins with scientific truth, and that truth, in this case, was revealed by a Black woman who insisted that children's minds mattered as much as laws. Her legacy stands as proof that evidence can challenge injustice, and that silence, when imposed, does not erase impact. Ernest Everett Just. Ernest Everett Just was a biologist whose ideas challenged the foundations of early 20th century science, yet his contributions were persistently marginalized by the institutions he helped advance. Born in 1883 in South Carolina, Just grew up in a segregated America that limited opportunity while demanding excellence. He excelled academically from a young age, earning admission to Dartmouth College, where he graduated magna cum laude, a rare distinction for a Black student at the time. Just's scientific career focused on cell biology and embryology, fields that were rapidly evolving as scientists attempted to understand how life develops at its most fundamental level. While many researchers concentrated almost exclusively on the nucleus as the command center of the cell, Just took a different approach. Through painstaking observation of marine organisms, especially sea urchins, he argued that the cell membrane played a critical and active role in development, fertilization, and environmental response. This perspective was revolutionary. Just demonstrated that fertilization was not merely a nuclear event, but a complex interaction between the cell and its surroundings. His experiments showed that changes at the cell surface could determine whether development succeeded or failed. Today, modern cell biology recognizes the membrane as essential to signaling, transport, and regulation, concepts that align directly with Just's early insights. Despite his groundbreaking work, Just faced systemic barriers that shaped his career. Although he conducted advanced research, American universities consistently denied him permanent positions at major research institutions. Instead, he spent much of his professional life teaching at Howard University, where he mentored students while conducting research with limited resources. His intellect was never in question, his access was. Frustrated by racial exclusion in U.S. scientific circles, Just increasingly turned to Europe, where he found laboratories willing to support his research without racial restriction. In Germany and France, he published influential papers and wrote his major work, The Biology of the Cell Surface, a book that synthesized decades of observation and theory. Yet even as his ideas gained traction abroad, recognition at home remained scarce. Just's resistance to dominant scientific trends also contributed to his marginalization. He challenged reductionist thinking and warned against oversimplifying biological systems, positions that placed him at odds with powerful figures in American science. Rather than adapt his conclusions for acceptance, Just defended evidence over consensus, a stance that cost him visibility in an increasingly competitive academic hierarchy. Ernest Everett Just died in 1941 at the age of 58 after years of illness compounded by limited medical access. By the time molecular biology later validated many of his concepts, his name had largely faded from mainstream scientific narratives. Remembering Ernest Everett Just is not about elevating a forgotten scientist out of sympathy. It is about restoring intellectual honesty. He helped redirect how scientists understand living cells, insisting that life could not be reduced to a single component or theory. His work reminds us that scientific progress does not always follow power. It often follows those brave enough to question it. Just was silenced not because he was wrong, but because he was early, and because he was Black. Jane Cook Wright. Jane Cook Wright was a physician-scientist who transformed cancer treatment from experimental hope into systematic care. Yet her name rarely appears alongside the breakthroughs she helped normalize. Born in 1919 in New York City, Wright was raised in a household where medicine was both a calling and a responsibility. Her father, Dr. Lewis T. Wright, was a pioneering surgeon and early advocate for cancer research at Harlem Hospital. One of Wright's most influential contributions was her development of patient-derived tumor testing, an early form of personalized medicine. She and her team examined cancer cells taken directly from patients to determine which drugs would be most effective before treatment began. This approach reduced unnecessary toxicity and improved outcomes, laying the groundwork for modern targeted therapy and individualized cancer care, decades before those terms became common. Wright also played a crucial role in expanding cancer treatment access. She advocated for combining chemotherapy with surgery and radiation, helping establish multimodal treatment protocols that are now standard practice. Her clinical trials contributed to increased survival rates for certain cancers and shifted oncological thinking from fatalism to strategy. Despite her achievements, Wright faced layered barriers as a Black woman in academic medicine. Leadership roles were rare, and recognition often lagged behind impact. Still, she rose steadily. In 1967, she became the highest-ranking African-American woman at a U.S. medical institution when she was appointed Associate Dean at New York Medical College. Later, she served as president of the American Society of Clinical Oncology, influencing national standards for cancer research and treatment. Wright's work extended beyond laboratories and hospitals. She helped found organizations dedicated to global cancer education, bringing treatment knowledge to developing countries where resources were scarce. Her vision was clear: advances in medicine meant little if they were not shared equitably. Jane Cook Wright died in 2013 at the age of 93. By then, chemotherapy had become a cornerstone of cancer care worldwide, administered according to principles she helped establish. Yet public narratives of oncology often omit her role, favoring institutional names over individual contributors who challenged convention. Remembering Jane Cook Wright is not about adding diversity to history, it is about accuracy. She helped redefine how cancer is treated, proving that careful testing, patient-centered strategy, and persistence could turn experimental drugs into life-saving tools. Her legacy lives in every personalized treatment plan, and in every patient given a fighting chance because science chose evidence over doubt. Lewis Howard Latimer. Lewis Howard Latimer was an inventor, draftsman, and engineer whose work powered the modern world. Yet history often placed him in the shadows of men whose success depended on his precision. Born in 1848 in Massachusetts to parents who had escaped slavery, Latimer grew up in a nation still defining freedom while restricting opportunity. Formal education was limited, but curiosity was not. From an early age, Latimer demonstrated an exceptional ability to learn complex systems independently. His entry into science was unconventional. As a young man, Latimer taught himself mechanical drafting, a skill that would change the course of his life. In the 1870s, he was hired by a patent law firm, where his technical drawings proved so accurate that they became decisive in legal battles. One of his earliest major contributions was producing the patent drawings for Alexander Graham Bell's telephone, documentation that helped secure Bell's claim during a race against competing inventors. Latimer's most transformative work came in the field of electric lighting. Early light bulbs were fragile, expensive, and burned out quickly, limiting their practicality. Latimer developed an improved carbon filament, significantly increasing bulb durability and reducing cost. His innovation made electric lighting feasible for widespread use, moving it beyond laboratories and elite spaces into homes, streets, and workplaces. Unlike many narratives that isolate credit around a single figure, the reality of electrical innovation was collaborative. Latimer worked closely with Hiram Maxim and later joined Thomas Edison's team. Within Edison's organization, Latimer was the only Black engineer and one of the few people who understood the entire electrical system, from generation to distribution to installation. He authored Incandescent Electric Lighting, a practical description of the Edison system, a technical guide that trained engineers worldwide. Yet recognition did not follow contribution. Latimer's name rarely appeared in popular histories of electricity, despite his patents, publications, and system-level expertise. He was often presented as a helper rather than a creator, a framing shaped more by race than reality. While Edison became a symbol of invention, Latimer remained largely invisible to the public eye, even though cities illuminated at night depended on solutions he helped perfect. Latimer also understood the social implications of technology. He believed that innovation should improve daily life, not merely demonstrate power. Through his work, electric light became safer, more reliable, and accessible, fundamentally altering how people lived, worked, and interacted after dark. Lewis Howard Latimer died in 1928 at the age of 80, long after electric lighting had transformed civilization. By then, his contributions were embedded so deeply into infrastructure that they became invisible. Recognition came slowly, through engineering societies and historical reassessment rather than public celebration. Remembering Lewis Howard Latimer is not about diminishing others. It is about restoring balance. He helped turn electricity from an experiment into an everyday necessity. His story reveals how innovation can be silenced, not by failure, but by omission. Latimer proved that brilliance does not always stand in the spotlight. Sometimes it is the light itself. These scientists didn't fail history, history failed them. Their discoveries power our hospitals, schools, phones, and daily lives, yet their names were nearly erased from memory. The real question isn't whether they were brilliant. The question is why recognition came decades too late or not at all. Was it oversight or was it intentional silence? And how many other innovators are still missing from the story we tell today? If learning about these legends changed your perspective, say their names below. Do you believe the world is finally ready to give credit where it's due? Or is history still being written selectively? Join the discussion in the comments and help keep the truth alive with Black Excellence Legends.